Okay, I'm showing all 9 advisory board members, and I think the staff and the registered guests, everyone who is signed up, looks like has been able to join us. Bart, should we go ahead and start? Is it now a good time to read the opening intro?
Yep, go ahead. I think so. I bring this meeting to order.
Okay. Well, welcome to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting, April 12th. My name is Penny Holler. I'll be facilitating the Zoom video portion of this meeting. I'm joined here by Director Derek Rogers and additional Parks and Rec staff via Zoom. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel. During the meeting, please mute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon found in the lower left side of the Zoom menu. This section is also where you can turn your camera on and off. For purposes of this public meeting, please keep your video on during the meeting. For general public comment, Chair Bart Littlejohn will call you by name to speak. Each participant has 3 minutes for public comment. After public comment is over, you're welcome to stay on the call if you would like. Similar rules apply for comments on agenda items, limited to 3 minutes, and then board members will continue their discussion afterwards. As a reminder, please state your name and your title each time you speak. And if a vote is necessary, the chair will capture votes from each advisory board member separately by roll call vote. And with that, I would like to turn the meeting over to Chair Bart Littlejohn.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. Right now, I'd just like to do a quick roll call, see who we have with us. Starting off, Jackie Becker. If you would just say here. Jackie
here.
Becker. Okay.
Here.
John Blazik.
Here.
Brendan Downey.
Here.
Marilyn Hall.
Here.
John Nalbandian.
Here.
Amber Nickel.
Here.
Pat Phillips.
Here.
Val Renault.
Here.
And me. Here. All right. We got a full boat. Okay. And to start us off with, I would like to bring us to item B, which are the minutes from our previous meeting on March 8th. If you haven't had a chance to go ahead and review those minutes, if you could do so now, that would be great. If everything's looking okay, I'd entertain a motion to go ahead and approve them.
Val Renault, I move that we approve the minutes.
Pat Phillips, I second that motion.
Okay, that's Val Renault with the motion and Pat Phillips with the second. Bart Littlejohn, Chair, Parks and Rec. Is there any further discussion or questions regarding the minutes? Not seeing any. And I think I'll just do a voice vote on this. All those in favor, just please say aye. Any opposed, please say nay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Looks like the ayes carry it, and it looks like it was pretty unanimous. So, all right, the minutes are approved. That brings us to section C, public comment. Penny, it looks like we have a couple visitors today. And
We
were
do.
they, okay,
Penny Holler, management analyst. I believe all our guests today are a part of agenda item number 1 on a partnership effort. I guess I would request if anyone is here to speak on general public comments, could you please raise your hand for us so you can be recognized and speak during general public comment instead of on agenda item number 1 with our partnership efforts with Friends of the Caw? So I don't see anyone who has joined for general public comment.
okay, all right. And with that, I forgot, are we gonna go ahead and present and then have public comment, or do we want public comment first on the item?
Certainly up to the board. I know for this item, we have introductions and a presentation. And then usually that would probably be the best time to open it up to members of the public to comment on that item.
All right, that sounds good. Bart Littlejohn, Chair, Parks and Rec. If I would go ahead and hand it over to you guys for the presentation, and then to our visitors out there and guests, we'll go ahead and have public comment right after that.
I'd like to go ahead and recognize our special guest today, Dawn Buehler. She's listed on the agenda as the Executive Director. I know, Dawn, you and Director Derek Rogers have been working on this item, so welcome. Let me know if you are prepared to screen share for your presentation, or if that's something that I can do from this end.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Penny. Yes, I'm prepared to screen share, so I could do that. I will do that real quick. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us this afternoon. I'm joined by the program manager for Friends of the Caw. Her name's Kim Bellamere, if you see her on the screen, and also David Sane, representing Sane Works. And we have a project concept that we're working on, and we've been working on this for a couple of years, and I'll try to go through this quickly because I know your time is short. So I sent a version of this, a PDF of this to Penny. So if you want to see it in more detail, I'm sure that she could provide that so that you could watch it at your own pace. So just a little bit about Friends of the Caw. We're a 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is to protect and preserve the Kansas River, but we also work to promote compatible public recreational use and public access. The Kansas River is one of only 3 rivers in the entire state of Kansas that is a public waterway. That means that it's public from the high water mark on each side of the river. All of the other streams in Kansas are private. So the Kansas River is public land. It's not any different than a park that's a public park. So we use it as one of our great public land places to enjoy. So today we're going to talk to you about a project we're calling the Kansas River to Community Connection Project. And I'm going to go over quickly our goals, benefits, partners, costs, and then the project timeline. And what we're asking for today is for Lawrence Park and Recreation to be a partner on this project. Now, we do have plans to bring this to every community along the Kansas River at some point, but we'd really like to see a pilot project occur in downtown Lawrence to connect people between the Kansas River and the Lawrence community. So here's the overview of our project. The Kansas River is a national water trail. It was designated in 2012, and there are 19 access ramps along the 173-mile corridor. The river touches 10 counties and has access to 13 communities, of which Lawrence is one of them. We are looking to put a kayak and canoe access ramp and a kayak and canoe storage locker with bike security at Burcham Park in Lawrence, Kansas. This is the Kansas River access map. Just to orient you, the river starts in Junction City, flows 173 miles to Kansas City. Along the way, there are 19 ramps. There are 2 right now in Lawrence, one in Riverfront Park, which is above Bowersock Dam and located in North Lawrence. The second ramp is at 8th Street. We call it the 8th Street ramp, but it's on the downside of Bowersock, and it's also in North Lawrence. So we're looking for something that comes on the south side, a south side exit that can allow people to come into the downtown area. This is just a map that David Sane with Sane Works put together for us to show us where Bircham Park is. You can see the Kansas Rowing Boathouse, the KU Boathouse, and we're looking at an area that we think might be a good place, and this is based upon meetings with the Parks and Rec staff and with everyone on the team of putting in a public kayak canoe launch ramp and a locker right upstream of the KU Boathouse. This is a concept drawing, and if you have questions about the storage locker, David Sane, who's a local architect and a professor at KU, he's on the line here with us today and can answer your questions. But the kayak storage locker and a canoe locker, it's meant to hold 6 units. There are 6 doors. It'll have a slide rollout on it so that you can place your canoe or your kayak and all its contents, everything, into the kayak storage locker, and then you put your own lock on it. And so the way that we envision this is that people coming down the Kansas River, and we'll talk about in a minute the water trail, but they'll come down the Kansas River, stop in Lawrence, put their gear into the kayak storage locker, and then walk or rent a bike and go into downtown and have dinner, maybe even stay the night in a hotel, but have a night to get off the river. This is the idea of what we call bike security, but it's on the back end of this system would allow a bike to be stored underneath the kayak storage locker. We do have quite a few people that use the river are also bike riders, and one of the things that they're looking for is a way to put their bike on the back, or their canoe or their kayak on the back of their bike, and they'll haul it up and down trails. And so they'll go in between access points on rivers. If you've never seen it, it's a pretty cool thing. And then they'll take their bike and they'll take it apart and put it in their boat and go on the waterway. So it's almost like a loop. They're looking for a loop to have for recreation. So these are some of the project benefits. We would like to showcase Lawrence as the host of this pilot project and to be the first one on the Kansas River. We believe that we'll get media attention and outreach opportunities as the premier river downtown connection. We'll also increase tourism opportunities for those using the Kansas River Water Trail and bring people into Lawrence as a destination for river use, a connection to the Lawrence Loop and the park systems with the bike feature, and a connection to the greater vision of the riverfront design. We know that there's plans in the works for some features below Bowersock and also the connection to the Lawrence Loop and the ability for the connection between the bike trails and the river. These are just some quick numbers. And again, I encourage you to get the PowerPoint from Penny so that you can see it in more detail. But Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks and Tourism did a boat ramp analysis in July to September of 2018. There were 160 people that were using Rising Sun boat ramp. That's the boat ramp in Lecompton. That's the one that a lot of people would put in at to come to Lawrence. We see a lot of folks using that section of the river so that they'll end in Lawrence. So we wanted to show you that there's quite a bit of usage on the river at these different locations. And these were just the locations that Wildlife and Parks used to do their boat ramp analysis. This I also thought was interesting. This is the type of vessel that was used, the type of watercraft, kayaks, canoes, boats, and paddle boards. And the greatest increase that we're seeing is in the use of kayaks. And the reason that DeSoto is so high is because it's a 5-mile section. It's a shorter section that people can get on to the Kansas River. So if we put an exit point and a kayak storage locker in downtown Lawrence, we know that we're going to see an increase from the Lawrence riverfront down to Bircham Park, because it'll be a short 2-mile section. There's only one other 2-mile section, and it's in Manhattan. So I wanted to give you some numbers about things that are happening in terms of kayaking and rivers. There's the Little Apple Paddle in Manhattan. They have had an event there for the last, it'll be 6 years this year. They had 99 people the first year. The last event was 350 people in 2018. 2019 was a flood year, 2020 was COVID. So we're hoping that 2021 will be back to having people at this event, but they had to cut it off. They ended up having like 100 people on the wait list. So we know that there's a huge interest in these events on the river. Friends of the Caw in 2020, we had a 40% increase in our membership, the highest ever in the history of Friends of the Caw. Our beginner events sell out within 48 hours. We post something and people have signed up and completely sold it out. Last year in late fall, we hosted a beginner event in DeSoto. It had over 100 people on the wait list to get on the Kansas River on a beginner event. Kayaks are sold out regionally. I don't know if you all know that, but it's really hard to find a kayak in the last year. We did an event in July of last year where we kayaked the entire Kansas River. We started in Junction City and ended in Kansas City to show people that you can kayak the entire Kansas River Water Trail. And if any of you are bike riders, you're familiar with the Katy Trail in Missouri. It's the same concept. You go from community to community to community along your trail, and you stop and you get food and you resupply and you go to the restaurants and you maybe stay at a hotel and take a shower. This is what we're talking about with the Kansas River Water Trail. People can start at the beginning, end in Kansas City, and stop in Lawrence along the way, but they need a place to put their kayak and their gear and lock it up, because they're not going to carry their kayak into downtown Lawrence. There's no place to put it, right? So if they can leave it down in Bircham Park in a storage locker, then they can come into town. When we did the journey, it took us 9 days. We made 7 community visits. We did stop in Lawrence, and 2 of your city commissioners came and joined us down at the boat ramp, along with a lot of the community members in Lawrence, and welcomed us into town. And we had a hamburger from the burger stand, and we had ice cream from Silas and Maddie's, and we put it all over Facebook Live so that people knew that they could enjoy something from the community. So there's lots of things happening on the River Water Trail. The Topeka Weir is almost finished. There's going to be safe passage through Topeka. Manhattan has a 3 Rivers project. Topeka is going to develop their downtown. I'm on that committee, and it will happen. We're finally moving in a direction for that. And then there's other cities that want to incorporate the kayak storage lockers as well. So we have lots of activity happening up and down the river. These are the project partners. Friends of the Caw will write the grant, manage the project in coordination with the partners, and have financial responsibility for the grant funds. We're asking for the City of Lawrence Parks and Recreation to provide the space for the project at Bircham Park and have the staff to help complete the concrete pad for the storage locker. David Sane with Sane Works will design and build the kayak storage locker with the bike security feature. And then we've talked to the Evergy Green Team, which, if you're familiar with Evergy, they have a plant upstream in Lawrence. Their green team will build the kayak and canoe access ramp. All materials will be built into the grant funds. We did just a brief project cost. This is what we would apply for with the grant. I will tell you it's very much an estimate because the grant is not due until September. So we've got some time to work out the details, but we will include these costs into the grant. Here's the timeline. The RFP will be out in spring 2021. The grant is due in September. It will be awarded in spring of 2022. I'm sorry, did I say that? The RFP is out spring of 2021, which is now. The grant is due this September. It will be awarded in spring of 2022. We believe we can build the locker over the summer of 2022 and have the project completed in the fall of 2022. And there's my contact information. And I hope I didn't take too much time, but I did want to give you as much information as possible to consider this project. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dawn. That's awesome. It's really great to hear. I think our only other person, it's like looks like we have David Sain on here as well. With that, I would like to go ahead and open it up to questions from the board.
I have a question. Marilyn Hull, advisory board member. To what entity are you applying for the grant? That's question one. And question two is, will there be ongoing maintenance costs that Lawrence Parks and Recreation will have to pay?
Thank you, Marilyn. Those are really good questions, and I should have included those. The grant is going to be to Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks and Tourism's Recreational Trails Grant. And they have funded water trail projects once before. They do fund a lot of bike projects, but we're hopeful that they'll see the opportunity to fund another water trail project. The ongoing maintenance would be provided by Lawrence Parks and Recreation, but I'd like for David maybe to say a few words about what he expects for long-term maintenance.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Okay.
You hear me now? Yeah, I had problems with my internet. I've been doing 2 Zoom classes a semester, all semester. For some reason today, Midco let me down. So I'm on my phone. The long-term maintenance for this should be extremely minimal because it'll all be welded steel, the entire structure, and then it'll all be hot dip galvanized, which is a very low maintenance finish that will last for decades. And if anybody spray paints it, it can be easily cleaned with just a solvent. If there's flood conditions, you'll be able to come in quite easily and power wash it off, and everything should be require very little maintenance in the long term with the kind of use of steel, the bolted connections, and the galvanized finish.
This is Pat Phillips, board member. David, one other question, because I was thinking of that flood area. Is that going to be also bolted down into the concrete?
Yes, yeah, it'll be bolted down to the concrete, and the sides of it are basically function like a bridge truss. So the whole thing should be able to withstand even if a tree comes up and hits it. But yeah, it'll be bolted to to concrete foundations, and it'll be the cage-like structure of it will just let water flow straight through. And then by lifting it about 4 feet, it's going to be about 30.
Across Robinson Park here on Mass Street. An alternate route would probably be down, Indiana, then you kind of loop around. So just throwing it.
Kind of 3 different ways to get there. So we need to be sure that we include those. Thank you.
Jackie Becker, Vice Chair, to kind of tag on to that, with the placement of where you put the ramp, you said there'd be bike parking there. Can we look to make sure that it's where the bike path is, especially if there's going to be a couple of routes? So when they park their kayak, they can see clearly that the bike path or where the bike might be can get them to either the trail that is, parallel to the river or the one that might have to go through the neighborhood if there's flooding.
Thank you, Jackie. We'll be sure and include that. in the discussions with Derek Rogers and Mark Heckler. Thank you.
Amber Nickel, advisory board member. I'm curious, I would assume it's because it's the safest place to put the ramp, but is that location because it's safe? It is a little remote and it's a little out of sight. So I'm just curious if that was just the best location.
Well, I think there were a couple of reasons, and Mark is on the phone, and he had an interest in having it in that part as well. I will tell you that from Friends of the Cause perspective, we wanted it to be far enough back that people, when they get back on the river, and you know this, Amber, as a river user, the portage on the north side is closer to the dam. So we need to be back far enough that we can get over across the river, get to the north portage to get around Bowersock to keep going on the trail. But Mark, would you like to talk about your thoughts on that as well?
Sure. Mark Hecker, Assistant Director of Parks and Rec. Basically, my thought is looking at it from the river. If you're out on the river, you have a kind of pretty serious bend of the river right there. And if you're coming down, even from the boat ramp up north, that makes a pretty easy spot to land because you can see it. If you get further down more by the trail in Bircham, there's a pretty good chance you could just go right past it if you didn't know it was coming up. So most of what I was thinking was visibility from the river, that you want to be able to see it. And, you know, it's not exactly ideal from on land where we'd like to have it, but I think it's best for where you can land kayaks. And I'm also thinking if we have more of a local use of kayaks, that might be a better place to put in if you just wanted to paddle around kind of out front of the boathouse and come back. And again, staying away from the dam. The recreational user who may not be an experienced kayaker could just kind of paddle around in that little stiller water there.
Yeah, I would agree with Mark that there's a little bit of an eddy there. If you remember, Amber, right before we get to the dock at KU, there's a little eddy. And the thought is that maybe by directing people to that spot, they don't get into the area that gets them closer to the dam. I think we thought it was more of a safety issue.
Another question, since this is the park is public use, are there hours of usage? And if people are kayaking, say when it's getting a little darker, what's the lighting situation where you think this is going to be located?
Well, that's a good question, Jackie. We hadn't really talked about lighting, but we probably should, because you're right. I mean, there are times, especially in the summer, where people are going to be coming in at dusk. So, Mark, maybe we can add that to our discussion list. Thank you, Jackie. It might be that the KU Boathouse has lighting, but we'll have to check that.
Marilyn Hull, advisory board member. Derek, what about this location relative to homeless camping? I think I just read a newspaper article that there was a cleanup in that area. And do we have any idea whether there's going to be any conflict between the kayak users and campers?
I'll speak up on that. Part of the reason for making it as cage-like as it is and as open as it is was one, so that it would be able to let floodwater wash through. But the other thing was to make it where it really isn't useful for much of anything to be put into it other than kayaks or something that's in dry bags that can be protected from the rain. So that was part of the goal, is that, or part of that, the idea of that design is just to make it not very useful for you. Like crawling into it wouldn't help. You would be no different, be much less comfortable than being outside, and then putting things in it, it would just fall through it if you didn't have it in dry bags or something, and it wouldn't be any more protected from the weather than it would be outside.
This is Marilyn Hull again. I wasn't so much thinking about the unit itself being tampered with as I'm thinking about kayakers being deterred in any way by the presence of campers that they, I don't know, might be uncomfortable around. Or if there are campsites out there with trash and that sort of thing.
Derek Rogers, Director of Parks and Recreation. I think there's always going to be a potential for conflict anytime between people camping that are homeless and the public. That being said, the area by the boathouse to the west, I do believe there's some camps in there. I don't recall seeing them in the road last week when I was up there near the boathouse. There's always that opportunity for conflict, and Bertram Park has seen a high number of people camping right now that are homeless. So that is always a possibility, and we will continue to work to try to keep separation between high-use public areas and those that camp.
Marilyn, we've also, as river users, Lawrence isn't the only community, as you well know, that has lots of camping along the river. And so we've been, and Kim Bellamere's online today, she's really done the work for us, but we've really been working with local homeless shelters to find, frankly, for information to help us work with people along the river and to be respectful of their camps and to help us with cleanups. So we have a cleanup that we're doing in April, and we're partnering this year with the Lawrence Community Shelter for the first time ever. And the purpose of that is for them to come in and help our volunteers understand how to work in these spaces. So I feel like we're trying to bring these groups in that can help our volunteers, which in turn helps them when they come into contact with homelessness along the river, up and down the entire corridor. So we are trying to work on that as well at Friends of the Caw.
Would there be any further questions for Dawn or David from the board?
Amber Nickel, board member. I just have a quick question. Will there be locks on the locker, or do people need to provide their own?
It is designed so that people bring their own. That way, I think, David, would you like to talk about the locking? I'll let him talk about it.
Yeah, we talked about this quite a bit and decided probably the most effective way would be to promote the fact that you bring your lock with you when you're paddling, and you'll be able to lock it when you use it. And that kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier of just trying to make it where it's not very useful for anything but putting a kayak and things in dry bags and stuff in. That should discourage people from using it otherwise. And then as you paddle, you'll bring your lock with you. Yeah, you'll lock your stuff up and then unlock it and take your lock with you. And that seemed more effective than any of the other kind of quite quickly became complicated ways of trying to deal with this. And then one of the things of the many about maintenance and other things we thought about is trying to make the hinges and everything on these doors extremely hardy, because knowing that people will be able to open them and climb on them or something like that, they'll be able to withstand that.
All right. I'm not seeing any additional questions for you guys. And thank you for bringing this to us and letting us know about it. This is awesome. I think it'll be a great boon to the city, and it looks like you guys have done some great work with the Parks and Rec staff to go ahead and develop this plan. So definitely go ahead and keep us in the loop. And we would love to know more about it as soon as it's able to come closer to being able to get off the ground. So, Val?
Yeah, I just had one question. Did that, I don't remember the total, but did that include adding the new pull-out or takeout on the south side of the river?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So it's adding those two then. And there would be there would be storage at both spots.
There would be storage right now at the Lawrence Bircham Park location. And if this little pilot project does well, then we have plans to take it in more places along the river. And so we're hoping to test drive it, if you will, here. It's such a great location, and it's so close to the downtown that we think it'll be a great place to test it out. So thank you all very much. I really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, guys, and thank you for leaving your contact information. We definitely appreciate it. All righty. To go ahead and get us going, I believe our next item is partnership activity with the Lawrence Art Center and Friends of Oak Hill Cemetery. Penny, I'm not sure who would be presenting on that. If you can help us out.
I'll take that one.
Okay.
Mark Hecker, Assistant Director of Parks and Recreation. So we wanted to highlight a couple more partnerships that we've been working on, and I'll talk about a couple more. I'm going to share a screen here really quick. Are you seeing that brochure? Okay, so a partnership we've developed, this is brand new, we started working on it in January. So we're partnering with the Lawrence Art Center to bring theater to the park. So this is programming. So if you see our little logo up here, we're a partner in this program. The Art Center is doing all the program work. And so you can see all types of youth theater they're presenting in South Park. They're doing an improv in South Park. So this is something that they said, you know, with COVID, they kind of have a capacity issue inside their building and they wanted to run programs, but they really needed space for for spectators and participants to come. So we were able to come up with a whole set of programs, and then we're going to host it over here in South Park. Watch a couple pictures. So we built a stage over in the northeast corner of South Park. Basically, it's going to be just kind of a flat deck where they can come out. They'll have a microphone. There won't be any lights, and they're going to do all types of performances. So the partnership was that we would build the deck, we'd provide the electricity, but we wanted them to leave it free to the public. So all these presentations or programs will be free for people to come out and enjoy. What this does is allow us to just provide a facility and them to do all the program work on it. It really is I think it's going to be kind of a cool little summer activity where people are just sick and tired of being sick and tired. So they want to get out in the park and enjoy some things. And it puts kids out on stage. So that's our stage. Looking at this was, you won't recognize it, but it's actually leftover pieces from the old skate rink. So we basically stacked them in, double stacked, and then bought new decking on top. We've kind of pulled it out of storage and put it out there, and it's going to work really great. It's 32 by 20 stage with the little step down platforms on each side. So you can see our very fancy backdrop we put back here is already there. The electrical panels are right over here on this side, so we can plug in and run anything we want. So just kind of a cool little partnership that we didn't have before this year, but I think it's going to be kind of fun. We're still working with the Lawrence Band on what we're going to do with them on your normal Wednesday night band concerts. But these performances are going to happen anywhere from Sunday night through Thursday night. And then we asked them not to book anything Friday, Saturday, and Sunday afternoon, so that if we had weddings or other bigger activities in the park, we wouldn't conflict. But I can see Picking and Fiddling might use this. I can see, Art in the Park will probably use this. Quite a few people are using it for lunch out of the county facility over there. So that's been a kind of a fun little partnership. Any questions on that one?
This
Hey,
is
Mark,
Pat.
John Blazic. Oh, go ahead, Pat.
Okay, just briefly, thanks, John. This is Pat Phillips, board member. Not a question, but just a comment, Mark. I was checking it out, being curious, and I saw it in a write-up that it was there. I love the repurposing of the equipment as far as the skating rink. And the whole idea of the partnership, I think, is such a positive way that Parks and Recs is connecting with programs that reach all different ages. So I really appreciate that work.
Mark, John Blazik, advisory board member. Hey, great idea. I think that's really cool. I think that's really good. Nice job, buddy.
Thanks. I'm kind of excited about it.
You gonna sing?
Oh,
Definitely not.
I just wanted to, I think it's really cool too. And I wonder, could you add a ramp so people in wheelchairs or, walkers could get on?
Mark Ecker, yes, I think that's a good thought. We'll talk with the Art Center folks about their
It would,
needs.
yeah, if you still have some wood, it probably wouldn't take that much.
Yeah, that's not a bad thought.
Art Littlejohn, Parks and Rec Chair. When would this be starting up? I'm sorry, I think I overlooked that.
So let's go back to their little brochure here. So you can see anywhere from, they have some early spring activities, and then it looks like they're planning production numbers through June, July. So I think it's going to be kind of fun. All these are out in South Park. This is in South Park. So I know they're starting to practice already. It's kind of fun to look in other people's brochure activities. We always have our little magazine, and we looked at their programming. It's like, well, that's kind of cool. We tend to kind of do our own thing. They do theirs, we do ours. We don't really mix too often. So this is kind of a cool opportunity that we'll kind of see a little bit of what they produce over there. Another partnership I was going to touch on, there's actually a couple more. Friends of Oak Hill, that's a partnership group. They're going to go apply for a grant for restoration of historic markers in Oak Hill Cemetery. And they've already put the grant together and they've submitted it. So if they're successful in that, that'll be the first time where we've kind of used a little bit of a private group to finesse the historical preservation. So they're targeting markers that are 100 plus years old that really don't have anybody hanging around to help preserve them. So we'll work with them as they get that put together. A couple of other partnerships. We're working with the Lawrence Skateboard Association. So there's a half pipe over there that needs to be taken out. And so we worked with them to come up with a kind of a schematic plan. Then we sent an RFP out to see what we can do with some skateboard designers to do a little improvement to that park. So if we take out a feature, we want to put something back. So they've been kind of an interesting group to work with because they have a little different angle on things than our staff do. So that's good fun. And then another good fun thing this is going to be future. So I'm cutting in on the ground floor here. I'm working with the Sertoma Club. They're talking about doing a drive-through lighting event. So this would be out at the YSC complex. So if you've been to Topeka or Kansas City, there's a number of parks where you can pay an admission, you drive through, they have holiday lights. So this would happen from roughly Thanksgiving through end of the year. They're kind of excited about it. So we're kind of working with them to do a MOU to figure out who does what, who pays for the electric, who pays for what. So that'll be coming in next month, but it's going to be kind of a cool event if we can pull it off. So those are the recent partnerships we're working on this week.
Amber Nickel, board member. Mark, I do have one question about the stage, because I would imagine that word's going to get out that there's a stage and electricity. So how will it be addressed if some band just wants to do something? Is it potentially be reserved? Is it potential for just anybody to hop on? How does that work?
Mark Eckert, Parks and Rec. Wouldn't that be terrible if we just had people performing over there all the time? Doggone it. We're going to set it up as a event, so you can basically reserve it. So if there's somebody that wants to reserve it, and there's times when it's not in that agreement with the Arts Center, they can reserve it for a band or whatever else we'd like to do. I would guess some of the special events that are held in South Park will want to use it just as a presentation stage too.
Jackie Becker, Vice Chair. Will there be a noise decibel limit for, let's say, said band who might want to be out there?
Mark Hecker, Parks and Rec. Yes. So when we talked with the Arts Center originally, we talked about, do we want lights? Do we want to do anything? And they said, no, we want to shut this down when it gets dark. So I think that will address neighborhood concerns. And I think we could be pretty sensitive to keeping the speaker levels down. And, as long as we aren't getting into that 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night, I think we'll probably be okay with the neighbors.
Our little John, Chair, Parks and Rec. Well, this sounds awesome. It sounds like great opportunities to go ahead and get some live music out there and give people a break. So it's like you said, as long as the speakers don't go to 11, I think we'll all be fine. But also I was thinking about what you were saying about the drive-through park, and it made me think of, also the before times, when we could actually do things. I went down to the Arboretum in Olathe, and they had like this light show as well. So I think that would be awesome. So, but yeah, what you guys are talking about with the drive-through light show, I think that's great.
Mark Ecker, the Parks and Rec. One of the models for this is if you go over to Topeka and Lake Shawnee and their campground, they've had a presentation in there for probably 10 years that, they just keep building, but it's usually a fundraiser for a specific group. So we're working with Sertoma to kind of hopefully angle the fundraising towards the We Folk Scholarship Fund for us. And then they have a number of things that they support. So hopefully between the two of us, we can put something together that's kind of cool for the community.
All right, y'all, do we have any additional comments for Mark on this? All right, great job, guys. Really is. All right, moving us on. Naming subcommittee updates. Item number 3. Who wants to take the wheel on this one?
Brendan, you want to do it or you want me to?
I thought you had said you were going to take this one, Amber. But yeah, I think you've got it.
All right. Well, I just have some quick notes. And I said, well, so what I might have you do, Brendan, is maybe, well, no, I'll find it. Hold on. Sorry. So we were just going to kind of do a quick highlight of the document that we started with, which Derek had kind of pieced together from some multiple city examples. And sorry, I've got kind of a split screen, so it's a little small, but so we're working on the purpose of this policy, the objectives of this policy, criteria for names, and most cities base that on either like the subdivision or a historical event or something that has happened, significance, or geographical, like a hill or a point or something like that. And then of course, like honoring either donations or somebody that's contributed greatly to Parks and Rec. And I guess one of the things, I'm not going to go through and really point out a bunch of the highlights yet, unless somebody wants to hear, how this is working through. But things that we talked about as a subcommittee that we're curious about is, do we tend as a board to want this to be a highly detailed and specific document? Do we tend to appreciate things that are a little more vague and open to interpretation? I've never written a policy like this before. And each city example that we've seen has been pretty different. So I'm just curious your thoughts on, how much wiggle room or specific we want to get. Also, a question was, does this process and policy need to be implemented for all naming events. So if we are going to name a fountain or a bench or an item within a park, do we want to make sure that this policy is put into place and that the formality that asking for community involvement and engagement is always utilized, or if it's just on these bigger projects? There are things to take into consideration around donations and sponsorships, so that's kind of where we're working now. What else? And then lastly, we're curious as a committee too, if, reviewing all of the current names of parks and things like that, are we curious or interested in retroactively trying to balance any community representation, or do we just want to move forward knowing that there's a slight imbalance of representation of the community and that's a focus that we, highlight in the policy? Or, what are your thoughts on that? And then if there's any other things that you would like us to take into consideration before we really start finalizing this draft. And we've set ourselves with a hopeful more final draft by the May meeting. That's our deadline.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you. This is John Nalbandian. I am a new member of the subcommittee. And I looked at the documents that we received. And, oh wait, Roger, is it?
No, this is the naming committee. You're thinking of the sponsorship committee, which we'll be presenting, I think, at a future meeting.
Oh.
So, but they all kind of,
they are interrelated.
Yeah.
Trust me, we discussed many things on sponsorship within the meeting too.
Yeah, I think regardless of what committee looks at it, that what we need to entertain is kind of like what it would cost to get your name on a plaque, like the names we have on the council member names or commissioner names we have on buildings. What would it cost for some group to just want their name, put some money in for like one of the picnic areas? I don't know why we couldn't do that. I think person wouldn't contribute a lot of money, but they'd get a name. It wouldn't be real prominent, but anyway, that's just the thought.
This is Val Renault, member. I'm on the committee with John about sponsorships. So it does seem like at some point pretty soon, maybe we would have to start working together to some extent, just because that does go into the naming. Like we're looking at a splash pad, we're trying to think, well, could some of those be named, and we could get some funds in advance. So just saying, I guess, that we're gonna be coordinating, I suppose.
Yeah, this is Bart Littlejohn, Chair, Parks and Rec. That was going to pretty much echo my point that it might behoove us to go ahead and if not model it after what we're doing for sponsorship with the tiers and whatnot and how it's outlined, that just to at least some collaboration between the two subcommittees to see exactly how we want to go ahead and proceed. And Amber, to go ahead and address your earlier question, like your first one, in terms of details, I think at this point, since we're just starting off, I think we just need plot points, and then we can kind of fill it out afterwards, just something to work from. So I think just getting something on paper or just getting something in front of us would probably be the best at this point. And to address, your latter question about, retroactively, looking at names, I'm not quite sure, because once you go down that path, it's personally speaking, it's there's a lot of discussion that needs to be had, within within all factors, and it's absolutely necessary. And yeah, that'll probably be a greater discussion that we'll go ahead and need to have about that.
Yeah, I want to point out some of the thoughts that have arisen just from looking at all these different cities' policies that I think are interesting. There are some cities that don't allow any living person to be, used as a namesake. And I think one even lists that they need to be deceased for at least 3 years. I mean, like, it's just so interesting, like the level of specificity, sorry, hard word. But I thought that was interesting. And then also, we did discuss as a committee the idea of the cost associated and like naming parks and large entities and facilities, just the cost associated with renaming things. And also it's just highly, and most of those city policies say it's, highly encouraged not to, or discouraged to change names for things. So I think that it gets a little tricky with naming things after people specifically, and it's almost kind of looks like something that might want to be avoided. So I think if you're, when we talk about bringing these two subcommittees together, almost like a sponsorship panel is a better way to honor people. Just a thought. So, Roger, was there anything that I'm missing?
This is John Nalbandian again. The sponsorship subcommittee asked me to reach out to the chamber, which I did. The Bonnie Lowe and Hugh Carter have both expressed an interest in meeting with us and talking about this whole idea of naming rights and partnerships. And we thought we could learn something from how the business community looks at this. And so that conversation is it's not scheduled, but they invited us to meet with them. And so we could learn from each other.
Roger, you were before me, so you should go.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Jackie.
So Amber, one of the, because obviously I'm on the sponsorship committee too. One of the things, that you find out that we're still trying to assess with Roger, and if Roger, you'd be all right to share the documents you shared with us. Just, what is the value of Parks and Rec, and be it a bench, be it a wading pool, be it a splash pad, be it a park, be it a trail, trying to figure out the community's comfortability on sponsorship. And so we did develop a quiz or a survey that we would like to try to get out. And then again, we have a listing. Roger put together a really nice document now of all of our parks that fits onto just a couple of sheets, have you take a look at it. And so I think maybe at some point, we could maybe merge us together or have a more larger roundtable discussion once you've kind of come up with how you've looked at naming rights and the things that you're finding out through the research you're doing. Because that's kind of how we ended up. We did a bunch of research and was like, oh, all these things we hadn't thought about. And Roger's been really excellent in having us take it slow so we don't jump into something too quickly. And then you end up with someone's name on something that maybe shouldn't have had a name on something. And so it's definitely a big thing to consider.
Art, may I?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Roger Brock, marketing specialist. In terms of the two things, naming rights, that would be more towards the sponsorship that the other committee is doing. I think that what Amber and Brendan is doing is more of putting together the thoughts in terms of how you name the parks for the community in general, not necessarily have dollars tied to them. Now where the marketing, the sponsorship policy comes into play is, sometimes naming happens because of dollars. And so we have to make sure, because there are a lot of, and I think I provided both teams, I believe, the list of all the parks and how they were named in the community, something that I put together in 2017 when we were talking about the sponsorship policy. And it gets kind of blurred lines, but it basically, I'm thinking of like a park like Parnell Park. It was a piece of land donated by the Parnell family, and so their name got attached to it. Now, I don't know how that happened, but it was probably more or less because they donated the piece of land. So those types of situations happen. Again, that becomes a donation, which we're still working on that policy as well. So you see the many different layers, and I'm just trying to make sure that each one of them, as we build these, kind of understand each other's function within the world. So when we're talking about naming, it could be a public piece of land. And I know there's some that may be coming forward in the future near where the police station is. That park will need to be named in the future. So to me, that one would take on the public process. Then we have developers that have pieces of land that bring land to us, which they may or may not, depending on the actual agreements and contracts, they may want a name, and that's where it would go through a process, similar, that it may be that they put the name forward, then it comes here, then it goes to the city commission. Then we have the sponsorships where we try to go and recruit people to do things where they would put their name on a building, and it could be tied to a time period. Just 5 to 7 years or whatever we determine is that value for the dollars they're wanting to invest. So I think that we're working towards a plan that's mainly looking at what defines the community and what they feel are criteria to name a park in the long term instance. As Amber said, a lot of communities that have policies, they kind of have this misnomer that it's very hard to rename them once they're named. But you have to have those criteria, as we've witnessed in recent past. And I'm thinking of in especially a college in particular that had something happen, and they removed statues and other things honoring people. So it becomes kind of, I don't want it to have some immediate thing that we have to do, but it's some thoughtful thoughts that Amber wanted to put forward to the group, just to kind of get their sense on if it's something that you would want to go back and maybe look at renaming things, or is it something that you think, okay, these things are named, let's keep them that way, unless there is something that comes up that we would rename them. And then just also, keeping in mind the balance that may need to happen in the future as we have new items come forward to us to be named. And then the sub features, as she mentioned, in a park, the shelters and those types of things. A lot of times we can do sponsorships with those, but they're not as prominent as a name on a park. Or, we can always have presenting. That's more of a sponsorship side of things, where we have, I'm Acme ABC presenting South Park. I'm not saying that would happen, but you could have some kind of company name on a park or a facility, whereas they're paying just to have their name. And then we'd have to basically have in the contract that we would make up with these people, we would have to do said things, like every time that we would produce a news release or some other material related to that park, we would have to have that name on there. And anytime we talked in public, we would have to say Acme presented, so it becomes a little bit tricky from the internal side of things when you're starting to do sponsorships, to make sure you're adhering to all the policies that you have within the contract. So to me, this is more of just naming at this point, trying to look at the mores of our community, trying to figure out exactly what those are and how we want to really go forward, and selecting names for the future of our parks.
This is Bart Littlejohn, Parks and Rec Chair. All right, everyone, you got that? I hope you were taking notes. I wasn't. So
This is Pat Phillips, board member. Yeah, I got it kind of. But one thing I just wanted to share when I was thinking, when you were talking, Amber, one criteria I thought was important to filter through is the mission statement of our city, as well as Parks and Rec. So kind of just one of the top of the envelope as it filters down.
Yeah, Pat, when you sent those comments over, that was really helpful. And they are noted in the Google Doc that we're working through. So I agree with you that that's a very important piece to take into consideration. Brendan, was there anything that we talked about that I'm forgetting?
No, I think you covered it out, but there's nothing I thought you were missing. I thought you covered every point that we talked about.
I feel really confident that we have a good base for the policy and the document. So I think that we'll easily be able to present something at the next meeting that hopefully just requires a few minor tweaks.
cool. That's great to hear. But yeah, I think sounds like you guys are on the right path, and it sounds like some collaboration with the sponsorship committee is probably in the future as well. So, yeah, thank you guys for all your hard work on this. We truly appreciate it.
One more, just I guess, question, comment. So since the park by the police department will be the next park then, right? Do we have a process already for, or is this going to be your debut with the new police park?
I think that'll be the debut, right?
Derek Rogers, Director of Parks and Recreation. That's what we were thinking. This would be a great time to get a good process in place to get the community engagement, to name the parks. And that's something I'm not really sure has been there in the past. And by having a policy that really spells out how the community gets engaged, how the advisory board gets engaged, how the commission gets engaged, should be a fun process and a pretty neat thing to see in action. So yes, whatever you call that park, that's the one. It could be Eisenhower Park for a street. It could be Police Department Park, whatever the community wants to come up with.
Amber, Bart Roger Steinbrock, Marketing Supervisor. Amber, why don't you mention what you found about that one city that does certain things with parcels of land and tell their name. So
Yeah, one thing that we found in some of the other city policies that I thought was really great was they mentioned that oftentimes before a park is officially named, there's a nickname for it, right? Train park, whatever. And those nicknames tend to stick even after the official name is made. And so they recommend just using numbers instead of a nickname, right? So it's Park 11, Park 12, Park 13, so that people don't get tempted to call parks by the wrong name before they're official. Is that that's what you're talking about, Roger, right? Because it's going to be called Cop Park if we're not careful.
That's a great point, Amber. Yeah, we probably should be conscious of that. Does anybody else have any further questions or comments for Amber and Brendan and Roger? All right, not seeing any. Okay, thank you guys again for all your hard work on it, and we look forward to your guys' presentation there. All right, looks like our next item is concerns and items of interest of the board. And actually, I would like to go ahead and start us off on this one. I don't know if you guys have seen, but there are quite a few people camping. So I guess an item of interest of mine would be the houselessness issue and just the relation of how Parks and Rec interacts with that.
And Derek Rogers, Director of Parks and Recreation. Tomorrow night, the City Commission meeting. It's a work session, and Brandon McGuire will be leading a discussion on homelessness and interaction. And I know Probably speaking for our department, legal will have a piece, Brandon will have a piece. I'm assuming law enforcement will also have a piece, possibly fire department and other departments. So it's, the bigger picture is the interactions, and from my perspective, it's how we started. I would say COVID is probably a good time to go back to in the history. We didn't have that many people out in our parks. We maybe didn't have as many people camping in our parks, but we did have, my perception was we had more people in more parks, various parks, but in lower numbers. So they could have been sleeping in South Park or sleeping in a gazebo or in a shelter. And then as the activity, the public came more out of the doors and had more recreation in our parks, the higher usage in our parks tends to change the interactions of those that are camping in our parks. So they tend to go a little more remote. So if you have a lot of activity in a park, usually that reduces some of the activity of the camping because they want to be away from that. Now we're to the point where we have I would say a higher concentration of people camping. We still have them in a lot of locations around Lawrence, whether it be a park, city property, or private property. But there may be a higher number. There might be 5, 6, 7 tents together in one area, whereas before it might have been 1 or 2 tents. So you notice that we had the higher usage of campers initially in Watson Park, Constant Park, and the open space. And between interactions with Bert Nash and community residents in the neighborhood, discussions with fire, law enforcement, other city services, the high use open space park areas and areas near schools and playgrounds are going to see a higher level of compliance with, you can't camp in a park unless you have a written permit by Parks and Recreation. And right now we have none of those permits. We did have one for Woody Park for up to 180 days. And so we encourage the folks through education and communication between Bert Nash and our staff that they needed to move out of Watson Park. It's still not in compliance to camp in any city park, but if you're in more of a secluded area or a wooded area, you may or may not have interactions with Parks and Rec and city staff in those areas. Again, sometimes it's real cut and dry. It's a safety or infrastructure issue. So for example, you're camping underneath the Vermont Street Bridge and you have a fire. There's a potential to damage infrastructure. There's times that somebody may be camping in a cul-de-sac or in a street. There's also potential for a danger, safety for the individual that's doing the camping. So we've been trying to decrease interactions between community users of a park or an open space or trails and those that are camping in our parks. And so there's a lot of communication to include with Bert Nash and with the homeless. I would say the interactions for the most part have been very civil and polite. When we ask campers to move, we give them 24 hours notice. Some of the campers are really good about picking up around their area. Others are not so good. We partner with areas or groups. The River Keepers, Friends of the Call, they're cleaning up behind the Santa Fe Depot April 24th. Anybody, first of all, a volunteer group that wants to help pick up in our parks, we're willing to co-sponsor and help them out. They want trash bags, they want a dumpster, and they got a group together, we'll help them. The North Lawrence group worked on Sunday to clean up along north side of the river up towards Riverfront, and they cleaned up around behind Sanders Shaw city property. So it's trying to keep a balance. The CDC direction was to minimize moving groups that are camping. The other piece of that equation is if there's not space available at your community shelter, you cannot criminalize homelessness. So we're trying to be very respectful of that. for the most part, it's Bert Nash and our staff that are communicating with folks that are camping. But in a nutshell, a lot of the things I'm going to talk about tomorrow.
Yeah, Penny Holler, management analyst. So that work session, I did send that out to the board via email. It starts at 5 o'clock. It's not the normal city commission time. You can also view that on YouTube, just like others might be viewing this tonight. And as Derek mentioned, I think, there recently was a joint city-county commission meeting where they, started talking about, how the city and the county partner together, and in some ways, some of the reason the city was able to take the lead on some of these recent shelter projects was the availability of grant funding. But now that we have the opportunity to look at this further, what does that look like between the city and community partners going forward? So I think those are some of the questions that they'll look at the meeting tomorrow.
This is Bart Littlejohn again, Chair Parks and Rec Board. And mostly I just wanted to, kind of get some of that information out in front of the board as well, and, kind of address it and make sure that, that it's something, top of mind. But I definitely just wanted to express that you guys have been put in a hard spot because you aren't the ones creating the policy. You're the ones enforcing the policy. You're usually the first point of contact on both sides between those folks who are houseless and those folks who see the houseless folks and, those interactions there. So like I said, you guys are put in a tough spot and I think you guys are doing a great job. So I'm glad to hear that, you're so open and willing to help folks that are wanting to volunteer and clean up. Only thing I would add is you might go ahead and communicate that a little bit more just to, make sure that, folks know that you're willing to be a partner with that. And I just wanted to reiterate that, I appreciate all the hard work and effort that you guys are putting into this.
Yeah, the resources piece, and Parks and Rec has done this for ages. The resource comes part of the equation when we do a cleanup, and about one a week is really maximizing the resources of the park staff. For example, we cleaned up, I think, around 5 campsites in 3 different areas of the city with 30 staff, and it took approximately 83 hours of staff time, half a day, that those 30 staff had normal duties to do additional duties as assigned, and it's not a task that staff look forward to doing. They do it because they're good people and it's community service. But they'd much rather be dragging ball fields, getting lines ready, and getting games ready for kids and prepping rec centers.
This is Val Renault, board member. I just had a question about the Woody Park infrastructure. Is that something that got packed away to be used again next year, or?
It's Derek Rogers, Director of Parks Recreation. We saved everything. We have it set up. That will be a city commission or a city initiative at whatever the next project is, if there's a next project or when. But it's also available, a lot of that stuff, for emergency management, tornado strikes. What can we use that stuff for? So it's interesting to look at possibilities, and sometimes you may not think of that's your primary purpose. Some of that stuff could be used at the Saratoga YSC light show this winter. It's nice to have the extra capability when we need it.
Were there any additional items of interest from the board? I am not seeing any. Okay, I'll go ahead and move us on. And it should be an interesting meeting tomorrow. Looks like our next item is staff update. Do we have any? Does anybody have any comments or questions regarding that?
I think I see Mark reaching for his mute button. No? Lee?
This is Pat Phillips, board member. I appreciate the pictures, the photos that are taken for all the things that were addressed. And also the signage at the Sesquicentennial Park. I know I messed that up, but I remember that she came to one of the meetings and that was something that she put out as far as a need and all the work that she's done. I think it's really good that there was some follow through to put that signage up. So I appreciate that.
Okay, not seeing a lot. Thank you guys for sending that out. I truly appreciate it. And you get the high golf clap from Val, so that's high approval indeed. So,
Well, and congratulations on the interns who got positions. That was nice.
well,
Those
I'm not.
long- Yeah,
Go
just
ahead.
the long lists of everything done are just fascinating every time. So thank you guys.
Absolutely, you guys are much appreciated. And unless you guys have anything you guys want to add, I think the next thing is the flame. Did you guys have any comments regarding the flame? I didn't realize 75th anniversary. That was something.
And Derek Rogers, Parks Recreation. Roger did a great write-up for the flame. Thank you, Roger. April 2nd, 1946, we'd started. Our goal is still to start off a year of celebration. Unfortunately, COVID continues to dampen our plans. Hopefully sometime later this summer, we can start kicking off some more outdoor events to start the celebration. Roger, would you like to add anything or any thoughts?
Nah, I think you covered it. I mean, it's a matter of just time.
All right, Roger, the master of understatement. You got it. I'll go ahead and move us on. All right, next item, calendar. Our next meeting is Monday, May 10th. Be there, be square. Thank you all for attending today. I truly appreciate it. And at this time, if nobody has anything else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
This is Marilyn Hull, board member. I motion we adjourn.
All right. Marilyn with the motion. Is there a second out there?
Amber Nickel, board member, I'll make a second.
All right, Amber with the second. Seeing as there is no discussion or questions about it, just a voice vote again. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, please say nay. All those in favor, please say. Oh, John, I'm sorry.
No.
Okay.
I was just saying yes.
Okay. All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Or if you're John, hold your finger up. Any opposed? All right. Hearing none, I think we're all a little slap happy. So okay, I think it's time to call it a day. So
Bye, everybody.
All right. Bye, everyone.
you.
Take care.
Yes. Thank you.